Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Chris and welcome back to Staffs in 3D, the channel where I talk to you about 3D. So it's been a little while since I've recorded one of these videos, and today we are going to go ahead and jump right back into our Wainsford project from last time. I think that soon I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit and try a different kind of project. I want to do a photo overlay project where we take a photo of a room and we will load that into FSpy so that we can basically remodel or visualize what a remodel of that room would look like. So stay tuned for that. But for today, we're going to go ahead and just keep going with the Wainsford project. So this is where we left off last time, and I think that I mentioned this before, at least in the overview video that I did. The roof in Archipack is a little bit tricky, so I think what we're going to do for our roof is we're just going to model it by hand. Also, our plan for today is I'm going to try to get the roof in there and the patio up front, and maybe we'll also get the trim in place on all of the corners, and I think that that will probably do it for today. And then next video we can next video we can get into our environment a little bit, like the grass, trees, sun, that kind of stuff, to make it start looking like a real house in a real place. So let's go ahead, and I'm gonna go ahead and add in a plane. We'll snap that to the corner there. Oh, and let's see, we need screencast keys. There we go. So you guys can follow along. And I'm just going to grab all of our edges. We'll actually stretch this out to that corner. And then we'll extrude to there and extrude on the y-axis to there. Alright, so that's our basic layout. Then I'm going to move all of these an extra 2 feet, let's say, on the y-axis. GY2, GX2, GX2, GY minus 2, GX minus 2. Also, I apologize if I end up coughing a lot in this video again. I still have this cough from Christmas. It's now February. So hopefully that goes away soon and you won't have to bear with that. Alright, so then we'll go ahead and let's take all of this and extrude it up. Let's go a foot up. Yeah. That way there will be a little bit of an edge at the base of the roof, and then then we'll go ahead and enter a loop cut here and a loop cut here. Then this stuff we'll go ahead and raise up to something that looks decent. I think that's a little bit of a steeper roof than I had in the original video, but that's alright. Then we'll also create a loop cut here and GZ snap to there, and we'll go to vertex select mode, and if you hit G twice, then you can like snap. You can move a vertex along one of the adjacent edges. So we'll do that. We'll bring this up a little bit higher, then GZ snap that up there. I think that's pretty good. And because of kind of the geometry or the angles and stuff of all of these four vertices, that looks a little bit weird. So we'll go ahead and dissolve these two faces, and we'll just go ahead and join that together, and this as as well, excuse me, and then go back to edge select, join those up, and likewise over here. Now we've got a nice crisp line where one joist runs into the next. And again, like, if anyone finds a good video explaining how to do the roof in Archipack, I would definitely appreciate it, because a lot of these things, like, when you run one roof into another, it doesn't end up meeting down at the bottom if it's a slightly different angle or something. Like, it just seems really, really fiddly and frustrating. So yeah, unless it's a really simple roof line, like just a straight line, I typically just end up modeling my own roof. And now I think I said before that the only add-on that I was going to be using for this project was going to be Archipack. And I think I lied. I'm going to go ahead and use another add-on that I use all the time. It's called Hard Ops. There's Hard Ops and Box Cutter that are both very similar sort of add-ons. I use Hard Ops a lot when I am modeling things for 3D printing, and it's basically just a cleaner Boolean tool. So it's really easy to select two objects and use one to cut out the other. So you can also do a lot of this just by using the default Boolean add-on, but I feel like Hard Ops just does a cleaner job of it, and it's a lot faster in my experience, and again, just a little bit cleaner, more reliable. And I think it's only $30, which may seem like a lot, depending on, you know, what your circumstances are. But given how much 3D printing I do and how much of a pain the Boolean modifier can sometimes be, it definitely seemed worth it to me. Anyway, so the way that we're going to do this is, so I've got our Hard Ops option over on the left-hand side selected. I'm going to add in a cube, and then let's go ahead and we'll snap our cursor to that vertex, and then we'll snap our selection to our cursor. Oops. Then we'll add a loop cut right in the center here, and oops, this view, we'll snap it to the peak, and then we'll drop it down 1 foot. Maybe 1.5. Yeah, let's do that. Then we'll drag this down past the bottom of our roof and scale this on the y-axis. Actually, I suppose we could just snap it, then gy minus 1.5. gy 1.5. Oh, did I snap that? I don't think I did. gy 1.5. Okay. And so now, if we grab these edges here and drop them down, for the moment, we'll go ahead and just kind of eyeball it. Actually, that looks pretty decent. If you wanted, you could find out what your exact angles are and then match them up. In this case, I don't think that anyone's going to be able to notice. So to use Hard Ops, we'll go ahead and grab this object. This is going to be our cutter object. So we'll grab this one first and then select our roof. And then if you hold Control, then you get this pie wheel that pops up. And so you can see that there are different options here. We're going to go ahead and select cut. And just that easily, we've got this shape that's been cut out. And yeah, I think that looks pretty nice. You can see in the very corner here, we've got a little bit of a vertical section, which I think, yeah, let's go ahead and remove that. We'll just make all of this flush, and then maybe at the end I might add we might add some I think it's called fascia. Oh right, we need to, you can't, one of the drawbacks to hard ops is sometimes if you snap something to like the exact vertex, it ends up kind of screwing up the Boolean a little bit, and I think that's the case with the default Boolean as well. But if you just drop it down a tiny bit below, then yeah, that should fix everything up for us. And then I'll also grab these two faces here, and we'll snap those back here. And in this case, we are able to snap because we're snapping to a separate object. When you're snapping to the object that you're cutting out of, that's where things get excuse me, that's where things get a little bit dicey sometimes. Not sure if you heard that. That's where things get dicey sometimes. Probably shouldn't talk into my coffee cup. All right, so now you can see that we've got a very clean cutout, so that we've got our overhang, our roof overhang. And I probably should have done this first. I'll go ahead and show you over here. The reason that I took that approach is because when I've tried using things like the inset tool or something, it doesn't seem to work nearly as cleanly as I wish it would. Like, if you're only insetting a little bit, the inset tool works great, but once you go further, then it starts kind of overlapping. And I mean, you could pretty easily take this and then grab your edges and fix it up. But anyway, so like, feel free to use that tool if you don't want to spend the $30 on the Hard Ops add-on. When I was first starting, that's definitely the approach that I would have taken. Yeah, I just find that this Hard Ops is one of those tools that I find really speeds up my workflow a lot. So yeah, you can definitely get around it, but this is the tool that I use a lot. So we'll go ahead and move that in here. Then GZ minus 1.5. That's not right, is it? GZ. Oh, I think it's, I forgot to snap. GZ minus 1. Whoops. GZ minus 1.5. There we go. And looks like I was able to match our angle over here pretty closely, actually. Because I just eyeballed it, I wasn't sure if this angle, if the angle of the garage roof line was going to be the same as the main house, but it looks like it's pretty even, actually. So now we'll go ahead and grab this guy, then select that, and same as before, hit cut, and there we go. So now we've got the same kind of setup on both of our roof overhangs. There's probably a more official term for that. I'm going to call them overhangs. All right, so and then if sometimes this kind of stuff can like all the cuts you make can get a little bit I don't know, frustrating, or they can kind of crowd your space a little bit. But fortunately, a couple of the benefits of hard ops is it does a cleaner job of the Boolean, at least in my experience. It's a lot faster since instead of having to click on modifier, then Boolean, then select the object, which all of that, not that it's super complicated, but if you're going to be making 200 Booleans in an hour or something, which especially when I work on 3D printing projects, sometimes that happens because I really like using Booleans for modeling so that you're able to very quickly and easily adjust the decisions that you've made. So it definitely saves time, and then it also automatically puts these into, if you go into object mode, visibility, no, viewport display, yeah, it automatically selects it to, or changes the display as from solid to wireframe, and then also it puts it over into a separate layer. They're not layers anymore. Collection. It puts it into a separate collection, and so very quickly and easily you can just turn off all of your cutter objects. So yeah, really nice. It makes for a pretty smooth workflow, and I'm not being sponsored by HardOps, but if you do a lot of Booleans, I recommend that you at least check it out. Sorry about that. All right, so now we've got our roof is all set up, and we're not going to have any shots from this side, so I'm not going to worry about cutting out over here behind the house. Actually, maybe we should go ahead and set up our camera, just kind of, sort of. So if we select our camera, then get our viewport into more or less the right position, and hit Control-Alt-0. Now that snaps our camera to our current viewport, and then what I typically do is I'll go into the item portion and I'll make sure that our X is exactly 90 degrees. Go ahead and make that 0. The reason that it's important to make our X 90 is because very rarely in photography should you take a picture where the camera is like angled down or angled up. Typically for architectural photography, you want to have a face on approach, I guess. Like you don't want to, if you angle it up, then it's going to subconsciously make the viewer feel like they're falling forward into the picture. Actually, let's go ahead and simulate that real quick. Like if we angle down, then it looks kind of like we're falling forward. If we angle it up, it looks kind of like we're falling back. I think I said that right. One trick that I have learned, and I to be honest, I don't really understand this just yet, but you can use the shift option, and maybe if I come over here, you can see that we've got our camera point, and then right now it's angling both up and down in about equal degrees. And if you take your shift, then let's do the other shift. If you shift on the y-axis, then that's a way to kind of like when you think of a picture of a skyscraper, you know how the camera typically creates this illusion of grandeur, I guess, and it makes it seem like the convergent angles of the like the two sides of the skyscraper are pointing inward, and so it kind of lifts your attention up towards the top to emphasize the height of the building. You can do that using the shift option. Like right now, it doesn't look as grand, and then if you start raising it up, now the house is kind of out of the scene. But if we drop this down, then you can see that it's creating this angle of like this upward motion but without changing the floor perspective. Hopefully that makes sense. It's something that, as I mentioned before, I don't fully understand. I hope to one day. I'm going to explore that further, and I might make a separate video just dedicated to that, because when it comes to ArcViz, perspective is a huge part of it. You know, photography is such a huge part of architectural visualization. So is lighting. At some point, I'll probably try to do a separate video on all of those things. Anyway, so then we'll go ahead and put this at a typical human height. So let's go ahead and set it at 6 feet so that it looks real. It looks like a human person took the picture. If you wanted, of course, you could also make it more of an aerial shot. In that case, angling the camera down might make more sense. But I think it's one of those things that you have to, excuse me, you have to kind of exaggerate to make sure that it doesn't just look unsettling. You need to make your way across what's known as the uncanny valley. All right, so now we've got a 50 millimeter focal length. Let's go ahead and make this 32. 32 is typically what I use. I think that that's about the focal length of the human eye. And anyway, that's what I typically work with for my architecture shots at the moment. Anyway, then we can. There's kind of a lot of empty space. Maybe not too much. If we were to, well, we'll get into more discussions about our scene setup in another video. I'm getting sidetracked. We're just doing the modeling right now. All right. Let's set up our patio real quick. And we're going to get into the texturing really soon, because, you know, that's one of those things that I always... What is going on here? There we go. Texturing is one of those things, kind of like lighting, where very quickly it turns it from this like very flat, unreal object into something that, I don't know, is a little bit more inspiring. All right, so we'll go ahead and drag this over here, and our wall sticks out a tiny bit from the steps, which is fine. We'll just snap that back to the steps. And then we'll snap to here. And how big should this patio be? Let's have it stick out a foot, you think? 1.5 feet? Let's go 2 feet. That took too long. All right. It's funny how sometimes it's the really unimportant details that you end up focusing on. So for the depth of this, you could either extrude it down, or you can go into your modifier tab and select a solidify modifier. That's typically what I do. And then we'll go ahead and apply the scale, and we'll make this 2 feet. That's probably going to dip down into the grass. Once we get into the grass, then we're going to create different like kind of contours and stuff. We probably won't go too crazy with the contours of the grass, of the ground, I guess. But if the ground were to dip down sharply over here, or if we put this kind of slightly on a hill, then by making this 2 feet, it's going to ensure that that the whole patio sinks down underneath. Which we might actually run into problems with our walls. Let's go ahead and fix that now. So that was 2 feet. So if we go into ArcPack and then make our floor an additional 2 feet, and then our wall height also an additional 2 feet, then now, so this so there's like a faint line right here, and all of this underneath is going to end up being our foundation wall, and then our normal wall up top. Maybe not all of it. We might make, because that's kind of a tall foundation wall. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see what happens when we get to that point. All right, so now let's go ahead and create our support beams for the roof overhang. And you could very easily just use a cube, but Archipack has a beam option, so let's go ahead and take advantage of that. Let's see. Beam. And snap that here. And let's make it, let's see, Archipack. If we make it 6 inches, that looks pretty good. 6 by 6. Oh, and then we'll snap it into place here, and then go 0.2 on the y-axis, gx minus 0.2. Just inset it a little bit from the very edge. All right. Then we'll go GZ, snap to the top there. Also, this is very random, but if at any point I say Z, I apologize. A lot of the tutorials that I listen to or that I watch are from Andrew Price. I think I mentioned that before. He's the founder, I guess, author of Blender Guru. He's got a website, blenderguru.com, and then also a YouTube channel. And then he is also the founder of Polygon, which is where I go to for all of my textures, pretty much. Anyway, he is from Australia, and because I listen to so much of his stuff, I end up saying Z a lot on accident, even though I'm an American. Fancy that. So I try to say Z, but every now and then I'll probably end up accidentally saying Z. Let's see. So we've got one pillar over right in the corner. I don't know if this pillar over here makes sense because it's only sticking out 2 feet. Structurally, it's probably not crucial. Honestly, for excuse me, for building this house, you would probably only need this one support beam, because the rest of the force, like the rest of the weight of that roof, would probably be held by the beam here and the beam here. So this is mostly like a stylistic thing. What if we put a second one here? Does that look weird? You know what? For now, we're gonna go ahead and just leave the one beam. Does that also look weird? It might. We might come back to that at a later point. All right, so we've got a. Also, if you're interested, you can have different profiles, including like a user-defined profile, and you can even draw like the shape of your beam using a curve. So if you wanted to have like what are those called? Like a Corinthian column where it's got, you know, all these like grooves and it's like this big circular beam or something. Feel free to do that. For this, we're just going to go ahead and put in this square beam for the moment. And I've spent way too long talking about beams. So we'll select our material. PVC white? Let's just do PVC white. I think that's... What does that look like? Oh, and you know what? I have not saved this since the beginning of the recording. That's probably not smart. Okay, so version 2.1, since this is part 2, All right. Yeah, so now if we open up our preview, okay, we'll probably go back in and make that a little bit more uneven because, I mean, since this is the way that I envision this beam is that it's like a wooden beam that we painted over, so we'll probably add a little bit more bump mapping and that kind of stuff. But the good thing is that since this is going to apply to all of our PVC white objects, we can add that a little bit later, and it's going to apply to all objects that have that same material. So now we're going to start lining all of this stuff up. GZ down to the bottom, and we'll go just up to the bottom of that roof line. Copy another one. Actually, you know what? I should probably get into the habit of using Alt-D as much as possible. Alt-D is similar to Shift-D, except that Shift-D makes a copy, and then Alt-D makes a makes an iteration. Oh, and we're not actually in the right location. So real quick tangent again. If we, oh, I snapped it to the wrong spot. If we go Shift D and then adjust like the height of this, then these two are separate objects. But because in this corner and that corner, it's going to be it's going to be the same height. All the details of it are going to be the same. Then we can go Alt D, and then if we were to adjust one of them, then it would adjust the other. So Alt D is excuse me. Alt D is one of those nice tricks for saving your CPU, and I think also your GPU. I think regardless of which method you use to render, I think it kind of saves the processing on both of them. So we'll go ahead and do that. Then we'll go ahead and Shift D, rotate on the x-axis by 90 degrees. I apologize for this cough. Then we'll snap that up to the top of this beam, and let's go ahead and actually set it on top of the beam, and then we'll snap it over there. That way it would actually be cut off by the roof, so then we'll have like a nice clean seam. I think that looks good. And then we'll bring this over, and we'll actually cut into the roof over here a little bit too. I suppose the other option is we could extend this up to the roof. That's another detail that we might explore a little bit later. Alright, so now all of our walls are the same height, so we can continue using Alt-D, and we'll bring this over here. Alt-D here. And again, because this is just kind of like a basic visualization, it's not super crucial to worry about putting like intersecting geometries. Like this beam is technically a little bit inside the wall. I think that if you were to set this up for like a video game or something, I think that is going to matter more. Where having extra geometry is typically frowned upon, and as well as intersecting geometry, because we don't, like, if you were to wrap that beam around, you would technically have more vertices, and yet I think it would also be preferred. Don't quote me on that. I don't know a whole lot about video game technology. Oops. Then we'll go ahead and do Shift-D on this one as well. Rotate by 90 degrees. And set this on top of our beam. And then we'll bring that over into the roof and extend this into the roof on the other side. Alright, so now we've got some trim on all of our corners, and our roof is looking pretty decent. It might extend a little bit far. 2 feet is kind of a lot. I think it might actually be typical though. Maybe it's just because I'm looking at it from this perspective. Also, a small detail. I wonder if this beam here, if that trim typically drops down into, like, is there usually a trim around like the edge of a porch overhang? Maybe. I might maybe there's not a trim there, but I might go back in and create kind of like a I don't know, almost like a skirting, and use like some siding texture. Anyway, we'll come back to that. In the meantime, we've successfully created our roof and our trim around the edges. Yeah, I think that's going to do it for this video. And then in the next video, we're finally going to get into our textures a little bit. We're going to texture our roof, our siding, our patio, probably our steps as well. That might actually be it for the next video, and then in the following one we'll get into like the grass and the trees, just because I know that I go on a lot of tangents, and I don't want you guys to have to suffer through really long videos. So we're at 37 minutes already, and we'll go ahead and conclude this video. Join me in the next one, and we'll start getting into our textures. Alright guys, see you in the next one. Bye.